Welcome everyone. This is a SIG-Network policy API meeting, a subgroup to SIG-Network. Today is the 3rd of June, 2025, and I should remind you to follow the CNCF Code of Conduct and be nice to each other. All right, now let's get started with our agenda, and Dan is here first with the V1 Alpha 1 API review discussion.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I had actually added this for the last meeting, but then nobody came really. But yeah, are we want to move on this? And if so, we don't have Bowie today. Yeah, if so, we need to figure out how to schedule time with Tim.
Do we want to have these comments addressed first, or is it ready to be reviewed like in a meeting?
Are just sort of explaining the diff. You know, this is why this thing changed. So, you know.
Oh, okay. So there is nothing to change here. It's just all the explanation.
Yeah, I think at the end there were some drive-by comments that I think Surya was going to address. And actually, Surya, you were supposed to explain exactly what this diff represents.
Yeah, that's why I was raising my hand. I forgot to do that. I will try to do that as soon as possible. And I think our plan was for you, Boe and Tim, to get together in the US time zone because it's easier to schedule a slot than trying to find a common. I'm guessing that didn't really work out.
Yeah, no, we didn't move forward on it while you were gone, so.
Yeah. I can try to address most of the comments if it's just some simple ones, but if I need help, I'll let people know. But at least for the PR message, I'll try to update it saying exactly from which commit and how I created the PR. So
yeah, no, the only thing that really needs to be addressed is we need to understand exactly what it is that this diff represents.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I can make that update. And I think the rest of the comments are not really blocking that review from happening.
Correct.
Okay, so it seems like Surya is on it now, and then do we need to find someone who will try to schedule this meeting? Was it supposed to be Bowie?
I think Dan is trying to do it, but can't find Bowie and Tim.
So you can assign that to me.
Ah, okay. I mean, that's my way of assigning stuff. Maybe I'll try to tag you properly later. Okay, sounds like a plan. Anything else on this part? I think there are no major changes, mostly like just the organizational part of it. Right? Sorry, you still have your hand up? Or?
No, I had already asked. Yeah, I mean, that is correct. Like, I think all the changes we wanted were already done before. So I think the issues that were assigned to me on the beta dashboard should be completed, except for this API card release issue. Nothing should be blocking from my side.
Okay, anything else on this topic, or do we move on then? Okay, moving on, then there are two topics from me. I came back recently and reviewed the current state of the two NPAPs that I have. So the most important one, I guess, is the ANP and BNP merge. I think there are two main non-resolved things there, all related to naming, which is kind of good, I guess. That means all the other things are kind of resolved. So I think, first of all, we need to figure out what kind of naming we want to have in our API and for the tier field. I think two main options that, based on our previous discussions, were renaming the whole resource to cluster network policy and like moving away from persona-based naming, because we figured that it's actually not that much tied to the personas. So not only admins could use admin network policy, for example. So basically the idea is then was to change it to cluster network policy and then have tier names for admin and baseline, potentially admin, for the currently existing APIs. And then there are potential extensions like platform tier or whatever else we may end up with. The downside of this is that we've spent some time advertising our existing API name, and that could be confusing for people to change it. So that's also another, I think, fairly big point to consider. So, and the second option is just to leave only one resource named admin network policy. Then for the tier options, we would have admin and baseline, and then also potentially platform, which doesn't make as much sense with the admin name. But again, I mean, we may or may not have it, and it leaves like the well advertised name in the API and requires less changes for those poor implementations that have already done the work. So I guess question number one, does that sound like the two most popular / reasonable options, or maybe you have any more ideas you want to include? No ideas?
Yeah, those sound like the two options to me. I mean, I'm tentatively in favor of the rename. I just would rather not carry like an alpha prototyping decision forward through the rest of time. And
Exactly.
yeah, I mean, it's a small amount of work for us as implementers to change the name. Maybe a little bit of confusion during the transition, but I think it'll be better long term.
Yeah, that's exactly the tough decision to make, basically. So it's like our last chance to change the name. So if we do all agree, and I'm not sure about that, that this option is better, generally speaking, then it's totally worth considering doing that. I'm not sure like if we should make some kind of voting here, or like I've tried to summarize that on the PR. I didn't get many opinions there in the comments. I don't know, maybe if you have any, you can speak up now.
Is the biggest resistance the fact that we already had an old name? Because that, in my experience, like the time to change the name is now, and that one's, in my experience, should have less weight.
Yeah, makes sense. I also think we've never like properly agreed that this option is better. So maybe that's another conversation to have. I'm not sure. There were some extra concerns about like multi-cluster, but I think we decided that it's not a big enough concern to have that. But yeah, again, I guess, but just a +1 on the fact that it's worth the hustle to change it. So the name is like actually better and the whole thing makes more sense. That would be a good enough argument to try and do that. Yeah, Surya?
Yeah, the reason why we are having to change the name now is because we're introducing the tier field, and the tier field already has an admin tier, so it doesn't really make sense to again have the name as the admin network policy. But what is also interesting is we never had a platform persona before. So if we are planning on adding other personas, then the first option makes more sense.
Yeah, I wouldn't say we have a plan on that really, but while having this discussion, some examples were raised, and I think Calicoles already has some of the extra tiers. I'm not sure if they're called exactly platform, but something along those lines. So, I mean, in general, it seems reasonable that more tiers could be added in the future, so it makes it more extensible, which is also kind of good. Yeah, then?
So I guess, yeah, I would put in, originally the plan had been to call it cluster network policy, and then we changed because of the multi-cluster argument, which we now agree doesn't make sense. So I guess that's an argument in favor of cluster network policy. I don't think that admin network policy with tier admin redundantly is, you know, a terrible thing. So I'm not sure that I would count that as being a point in favor. And then the other thing is, you know, maybe it's a good idea to rename it just because with the merge of ANP and BANP, it's now kind of a different thing. And so, you know, maybe giving it the new name will make it clearer, or like, you know, when you're looking at an object, it's very clear whether it's the old style ANP with separate BANP versus the new style cluster network policy that has everything all together. So yeah, I guess maybe I'm in favor of the rename.
Okay, that sounds almost like a consensus, as close as we have ever been to that. So that's cool. And then, yeah, another thing I forgot to mention, but it is mentioned in the PR that we were thinking about like adding the namespace option for the network policy in the future, which was supposed to be called developer network policy in the ANP-BNP world, but also then mentioned that like with the cluster network policy, it could be named something like application network policy. So I think not a big problem here, except for the fact that it will be ANP, but that thing will solve later. Okay, so sounds good then. I guess I've got, if there are any, if there is anyone opposed to this rename, I will just go ahead and summarize that in a pull request. And then, well, you can all GTM. Okay, awesome. Okay, and then another naming discussion that happened there, and I'm not sure if we want to do that or not at all. So it's about pass action. I think we have an agreement of the meaning of the pass action, which makes the naming decision easier. So that pass action would mean basically pass to the end of current tier, aka skip to the next tier. So there are multiple potential words that could express that. So I think I've seen options pass, return, or skip. All of those, like the kind of downside is that they're less explicit. So you most likely will have to read the docs for this action to make sure what exactly it does. And there was another one, which is next year, which is kind of more explicit, but maybe a bit uglier or longer. So any opinions about this part?
I think it's dangerous to assume that people will know just purely from the name what it means, or people will make assumptions. So I think, the pass, return, skip options are, although yes, you will have to look up what they mean, I don't mind them. Pass is probably not the best term. Return, I don't think is good, because where are you returning to? It's not like you made a function call and you're returning back to where you started. So skip might be the best option as far as I can see. Next year, it's very explicit, but yeah, kind of long. Maybe just next, but next is ambiguous because it tells you it might imply that you're just going to the next rule instead of the next tier. So it has to be next tier if you want to be explicit. So I would say the choice is probably between skip and next tier. Yeah, that's just my personal.
Thank you.
Just the word next.
That makes sense. Yeah, I think that Surya said in the chat is like all three of these options, they miss a bit of context. So pass what, skip to what, return from what, right? So and that's why I guess next tier, or I mean, if you want to replace next with also skip tier or something, still adds a bit more context. So you don't need to remember if it's about priorities, if it's about like some other ordering, it says tier, which hopefully helps. But yeah.
I'll just chime in. In Calico, we use pass, and I've used pass forever. There's never been any confusion about it. Next tier, the sort of dissonance for me is that it's not a verb. It's not an action thing. So skip tier or go to next tier seem more appropriate for a field called action. But yeah, somewhat selfishly, pass is my vote, just because it's gonna keep a single term for Calico users.
No, that's good. You have experience with this word, so if no one ever complained, I mean, doesn't mean they didn't struggle, but yeah, that's still good feedback. Okay, yeah, I guess then basically maybe another reason would be just it's already called pass. I hope I'm correct because I'm one of these people who always mixes up the words here. So unless we find a more explicit term, I guess, which everyone agrees to, it doesn't make sense to change pass to skip or anything like that. It doesn't add much, I would say.
I
So
actually
yeah,
have a
I mean,
different
go to next,
opinion. It's like
another option. Yeah.
I just think it's like a fairly advanced feature. Like, why not just make it more explicit? Are we like, what's the downside?
I don't think it's an advanced feature.
But the behavior is like a little bit like, why not make it more explicit? Are we like, we're not constrained to 80 characters on your screen, you know?
Yeah, I mean, if the concern is about the length of the name, I would think that most people who would ever use admin network policy probably use something like Terraform, so they ever have to type this in once or not even that, and they can convert it from whatever they want to next year. So I don't think the length the length of the field name is a concern here. It is very explicit, and it tells you it's out of the options. It's the one that makes it very clear what's happening. So from that perspective, I'm definitely in favor of next year.
I
I'm
mean,
just
if
saying,
we
like,
want to make it explicit, then I agree with Boe with the fact that it should be go to next year. So if you're debating, it should be between pass and go to next year, because next year itself is not that explicit. Like the action is next year. What does that mean? Like the action is going to the next year. I agree that it's more explicit and clear.
don't you English? You can verb your nouns. The
But if we are talking about explicitness, then better to
yeah,
be
like
go
I
to
just
added.
the concern I would have with explicitness is like, oh, you're like too explicit. But it's hard to conceive of like why we would want the meaning of this to be vague. Like, in the future, pass could pass to something else. Like, I don't know. Like, we probably just add a new thing at that point.
Forgive me if I'm missing something obvious, because I'm sort of filling in for Sean here. But how are we modeling the last tier behavior when it hits a pass or next tier rule?
Yeah, that's another thing we were discussing to add. So there is like a virtual default lowest tier, which is allow all, which is also the default networking policy in the Kubernetes cluster, which like doesn't really exist. So we were thinking about explicitly adding it to all our diagrams and then considering it to be the last non-skippable kind of non-configurable really tier to which you can get through all the policy layers.
Yeah, I think from that aligns with how we've done it in Calico, and it has worked fine, but is a slight bit of confusion if you're saying like go to the next tier, but then there is no tier like name or hook or object to sort of represent that.
And what's the
I don't-
vagueness with pass exactly? Like, why is that not clear?
Just
If-
pass doesn't say where exactly you go after this action. So we've discussed that also, right? We even had different options of what pass could mean. So we ended up with deciding that one option was always pass always goes to like network policy tier or something like that. So
Yeah, I think that
the
was
only vague part is it doesn't say where exactly you pass to where. This explicit option is supposed to tell you where exactly you end up after this action or something.
yeah, that was the discussion previously, was that pass could conceivably have gone to different places, and that was confusing.
I don't think that's a problem with naming, though. That's just a problem that we had explicitly described the semantics as being passed to network policy, and we're talking about changing that now. And so the question was, do we actually want to change the semantics more than should we rename it?
I think we agreed that we want to change the semantics, but then
Yes,
if
I
you
agree
could
that we
also
agreed
make
that.
after knowing the kind of new semantics, can we also make the name so it's obvious what the semantics is? So if we can do that, it's probably a good idea, because still you could, like, let's say pass could also mean, go to the very bottom layer, which is the default allow all or something. I could imagine doing that. I mean, go read the docs, obviously, but still.
Yeah, maybe, I just think it's better to be more explicit. Like, why not? Why not do your users a favor? I do understand, like, those are somewhat industry things that have appeared, but
Okay, so do you think we should do some? There is no obvious consensus here, but I think maybe we can pick one option from these two lists. Like, so the last explicit option winning is pass, I guess, based on what we already have, and then maybe if we can agree on like some best option from the explicit list, and then have some kind of vote, or I don't know. Yeah. Also, don't forget that the other actions we have are accept and deny. Are they called? So they're very short action words.
well, the thing is, deny in this tier, because you're actually the meaning of deny is just like deny, right? Or does it go to the next tier?
No, all
So,
deny is deny in this
I think
tier.
that
Yeah,
does change the meaning.
deny is deny, right? Like you are denying it right in that tier. You don't go anywhere. If you
Yeah.
want to be explicit where the deny is happening or what action it exactly does.
Which is also kind of makes them, so if you say, let's say deny is like the final action, same as accept. So if you just do pass, that could also be considered like as a final action, which again, like kind of meaning, say similar to accept or something like that, like going to the default cluster policy.
Yeah, that's
And
kind of why
yeah.
I'm more pushing for more explicit, because accept and deny, like the documentation is very simple. It's like accept, it's like accepted. Deny, it's denied. But pass the next tier or go to next tier is right. It's like you kind of have to read it to understand what it does.
Okay, so here's an argument. If people aren't going to read the docs, they'll think that next tier means that it goes from admin to baseline and skips over regular network policy.
But we don't. I mean, you have to read the docs.
Yeah, I
And
think
you know,
that's
if I-
the
Won't we,
sorry. That
I
was
just want to
sort of
say,
the
I thought we are going to add the network policy as a kind of virtual tier. I mean, you can't set it, but no?
But it
that
never
that's what I was
point
gonna
I was
say.
getting at earlier. It's I think pretty confusing that like network policy doesn't have a tier field, right? There's no
Yeah.
hook in the API. There's no representation of that other than in our diagrams and documentation. So if it's not going to have a tier, then it may be a tier virtually, but there's no tier field on those objects, right?
Yes.
Well, I mean, we have to live within the confines of our previous choices. So at some point, maybe we should add one, right? Like,
I'm now thinking maybe it like I kind of find this distinction important. So maybe we could actually try to include some word that will explain that the handling will continue into this action, like continue on the next year, something like that, that will tell you it's not the final action.
I think if you want explicitness, then you would want to change accept and deny to be like accept and exit or deny and exit.
Yeah, but by that you just assume that like the default is to continue handling, and then you make like passes the only action that will do that, and then you have
Well, in that
accept and
case-
exit, deny and exit.
You could change pass as well, but I'm saying I don't think that you can change just pass in a way that makes it clear that accept and deny are final. If you want to make that explicit, you have to make it explicit on all three.
Okay, so there is nothing we can do. We leave pass.
Well, how
Yeah,
about
I
we
guess
keep
it's-
pass as is, but then let's get this major thing done. And then later on, if it's a rename, it's just it's a small PR to rename it later, right? So before beta, we can still get some feedback. And
For sure. It's just, getting back to this discussion for the, I don't know which time, would be extra work. So if we can decide on something now and just leave it like this forever, we can always change it, of course, if we find it important.
Yeah, I'm not going to die on this hill. I just think, the one word like things, they seem to be a relic of a time when having everything super short is like worthwhile. I just think we should, it's like crash loop back off. Like it's like very long. It just seems to be okay to be more explicit.
No, I think it's just the point at this point, we just don't think that it is explicit enough, I guess, in a way. So that there is, I really don't see a way to be explicit enough with the name, just to have this like distinction with final actions versus this only pass action that continues handling. And then also saying where exactly you go, like using the word tier without having this extra question whether a network policy is a tier or not. I think these are all good points and could be, just more difficult at some point. Yeah, Casey?
Yeah, I think as I raised my hand, you were kind of talking about it, but I'm not convinced yet that next tier is like more correct in describing what the behavior is because of this question about the sort of implicit default tier of traditional network policies or namespace network policies. And maybe if we add that tier field to them and sort of codify that in the API, it would be. But without that, I think it's almost more confusing to say next tier and then go to something that isn't an explicit tier in
Yeah.
the API.
Yeah, exactly. I think I captured it a little bit here. So, okay, that all makes sense. I think more people are in favor of leaving pass. So I'll again try to capture it like this in an npap. And then it's like a no change. If we do find a nice name for it at some point, we can try again. Okay, that's awesome, actually. We're making some decisions here. Let me see. There was one more npap that I'm kind of working on, which is to allow for more protocols in the future, aka changing current ports field. One thing that we've discussed or touched on a couple times is the named ports, including our conversation during KubeCon about that, where we agreed that no one likes it. But I think it still like has a use case. So did we have a decision? Like, what's your impression on that?
I
Or we
thought,
just were complaining about it and that's it.
yeah, I thought there was a discussion with like Tim and maybe some other people, just like, can we just leave it out for now and then we can always easily add it back? That's what I recall.
I thought we said we keep it experimental, never get it to standard. And I think that's where it is.
Okay,
right now.
maybe that's like the same difference, I guess. Like,
Yeah. Like we don't consider it core because it's like we don't think it is stable enough and we don't think it's good enough or whatever.
by the way, like,
Okay.
I think for the purposes of like our current focus, it's mostly just to ratify stable, right? Like,
Yeah.
how important is it to clean up experimental?
I think
this
if
point.
anything going into the core whatever is the copy of that in experimental will change, but whatever is in experimental itself, which is FQDN and named ports, if I remember correctly at this stage, and nodes, those are the 3 extra fields we have. We don't really clean those up. Like we don't, like, I don't think we need
Okay,
to do a
I
thorough
think we
review.
just make that explicit, then it's technically like not in from this stable standpoint.
Yeah, yeah.
So can I ask what we, at this point, what do we consider stable? Do we add an extra tag to mark a field experimental or something?
Yeah, it's an extra tag to
Does
experimental.
named ports already have it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh yeah? Okay, that's cool then. Okay, and I think we don't have this like very strict rules about experimental fields as gateway API saying like if it wasn't promoted to stable in 6 months, then we remove it. At least for now we don't, so it can stay there for now for as long as we want.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, sounds like a plan. I'll also make sure to write it down then. Okay, so these are all the things from my side. I don't know if I need to add PR links every time here, but I will try to do these updates as soon as possible. And then please feel free to add your LGTMs to those, to NPAPs. I think we're very close to being ready to merge. Okay, any other topics for today?
So I think I wasn't here, unfortunately. So are we scheduling the final alpha V1 review?
Yeah, Dan agreed to schedule this meeting, and I think
Okay.
at this point we
And
consider,
then
yeah, to have it in the US time zone.
we already cut the tag and branched. Basically, I
here?
had some things that were assigned to me that I wasn't sure if I should do because it would just conflict with a whole bunch. Like it's like rewriting text, and that's going to be a real pain to merge. Did we branch it so like we could just send those PRs?
Not yet. Before branching and cutting is when we need Tim Hawkins to sign off.
Okay, so it is dependent on this.
Meeting and review, yeah.
I see. I
Because
mean, how
when
many?
we do the
I
branch
guess.
and the cut, there is this specific Kubernetes API annotation on the CRD, and I can't do that until we get an API approver seal. That's basically the
Oh, right.
paperwork.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, do we think it's going to drift significantly at this point? Like, should I just go ahead with some of the PRs?
Is it just the description change and things? I think the accept one we said let's hold it till the branching, but is it just the text description change?
Do you know who is going to add the text for the tiers description? Is someone doing that already, or? I think that was the biggest change, right? Like the baseline policy, the tiers description.
I guess that's gonna be a part of this merge NPAP that I'm doing because
Oh,
it's
okay, so you're
introduced in
doing
the
that.
tier field, so I guess I'll have
Okay.
to do that.
And then the protocols ports change. That's also a big one, right?
It is, but it's also moving somewhat slower, so I'll need to craft like the CRGs and then try to get some feedback from the API review team first, also to see if our YAMLs make sense in the Golang code. So yeah, that's probably, there is a chance this one will merge after your change.
Sorry, can it even merge before? Like it has to go after the V1 Alpha 1 review, no? Like
Yeah.
100%?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I thought you were saying about your like a change of for some I don't know, for some other PR anyway.
Yeah, I'm happy to help out with any of these if it makes it easier and faster. Nadia, I think you're currently assigned with some like pretty big ones.
Yeah, we'll see. Okay, I think I should have some time in the next couple of weeks to work on this, and I'll let you know. Maybe you can take a look at these ports CRD that I'll end up with and just give some initial review or something.
Okay.
And also, yeah, reviewing NPAPs is a big help.
Yeah, I think like we did want to get all the changes from KubeCon in probably in July-ish, even though people are probably also on vacation. so that we can kind of start iterating on the reviews towards the beta.
Yeah, but it's also generally blocked on this V1
Right.
Alpha 1 update. So that, yeah.
Surya, do you know when that will happen?
It's actually ready. It's waiting for that meeting to happen between Dan, you, and Tim. So
Okay. All right. So then we just need to
yeah.
schedule it. I guess I'll just ping on Slack.
Yeah,
then.
I mean, it was actually ready before I went on PTO 2 weeks ago. So I think maybe, yeah, we just need to schedule, find out Tim's free time, and then, yeah, that would be huge help.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep. And everything else moves in parallel. So doing what we can. Okay, sounds like a plan, I guess. Anything else?
Anyways, like if anyone feels like they need some help, I'm happy to just, do the changes that you tell me need to be done and then send the PR.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you. I guess more people will love LGTMs on all the things possible. So that's also a big help.
Okay.
Okay, sounds good then. I think there is nothing else. Last chance? Nope. Okay then, thank you all for joining and I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Okay. Thanks.